Hello, welcome to the Guillemot Kayaks shop. I'm Nick Schade. Today we'll be taking the material we sorted out in the previous episodes and arrange it for use on the forums. I want to set up a system where all the thinking I did to get the strip sorted out is done. So all I have to do is pick up a strip and install it on the forums. We have everything arranged in order, and I've got each strip individually identified with a number at the end, but I don't have anything to help me keep track of the process and make sure everything stays in order while I'm working on the strips. I want to give myself a few reference marks and just stuff to help me keep track of where all the strips are. So again, this just starts out with some good lines across the strips. And I'll do this to find the center line so I have it crossing right at the mirror point of these strips. Do it a couple locations along the length. And while I'm here, I'm going to put some numbers on it. And just to make it easier to keep track, I'm going to number from this side over, and I'm going to circle it. All right, so end up 26 on both strips across the center line. So we'll do this in a couple more locations. So we now have it marked out with hopefully enough sanity checks that when we're going to put all this wood on the boat, we're able to keep track of where everything goes, so we get everything in order, and we get this pattern moving evenly across the boat, and everything stays true to form. What I need to figure out now is exactly where to start, which strips, where they're going to start with. So the measurement from waterline to waterline, which is where I want to place these strips, going up from the datum waterline up over the top and back down to the other side, that measurement is 32 inches. So from the water line up to the center line is half that, 16 inches. So if we look at this, starting in the middle here, this is going to be the center line. We want to get at least 16 inches out here. So the last four strips here, we probably aren't going to use. Likewise on the other side. So we'll be starting at strip 5. But the other thing that's going on is I want this material to run from datum waterline to datum waterline, but the part line for the deck hull joint is someplace else. It's a little bit above that. Let me show you on the forms. So here we have the datum waterline, and on the other side it's over here. And so my goal is to strip from here all the way up to the center line with a mirror image on the other side. So measuring from datum waterline to datum waterline, we've got just under 32 inches. So in other words, from datum waterline up to the center line, we have just under 16 inches. So in order to get from here up to here, we need 16 inches worth of width of strips. And so actually a little bit less, so I have a little bit more than 16 inches. Pretty good guarantee we'll get all the way up here. But the part line between the deck and the hull is this line right here. So we have this distance right here that's going to be using the wood for the deck, but it's actually going to be applied when we're stripping up the hull. And so I want to separate out these strips right here and put those with the hull material and have the rest of the strips here be with the deck material. And so I need to figure out how much width of strips I need to get from here to here. It doesn't need to be exactly whatever this is, but I need something to work on so I can separate out those strips. So if I end up with the datum water line a little bit off, I'm okay with that. So this right here is the water line. This right here is the part line. And so we need to have enough strips to lay along here and build up to this point. And actually what we're going to be doing is stripping from here down to here. And so if we're starting here, 1, 2, 3, 4, or however many it needs to be. So we take out our tape measure, and I'm going to use the bottom edge of this as my point, and to the bottom edge here is 2.5 inches. For those in the metric system, it's about 6.5 centimeters. So back here at the strips, this is going to be the datum water line right there. And we want to go up 2.5 inches to get to the part line. So here's 2.5 inches, which is just over 3 strips. 4 strips is just under 3 inches. I'm going to call that close enough. So this is the part line. So these 4 strips will be applied to essentially the hull of the boat, and the rest of the strips from here on over will be the deck of the boat. So I want to separate these out. As I start stripping up the hull of the boat, I'll start with this strip. This will be the first strip to go on. It'll be right parallel to the part line. Then I'll put on 1, 2, 3, 4 strips, and I'll end up with some accent strips. Then I'll switch over to what were the flat grain strips, the lighter colored material right there. And so these 4 strips, which are strip 8, 7, 6, and 5, end up going with the hull material. These strips 4, 3, 2, 1 are spare. I'm going to keep those aside. I might need them to patch something up or something like that. You never know. So same thing over here. These 4 strips will be part of the hull, and this from here on over is all part of the deck. And so this is the datum water line. This is the part line. And these are spare. Those will be put aside. And so these strips from here on over up to the keel, up to the center line, are all going to be in the deck bundle. So the other thing I need to keep track of is which is the left side of the boat, which is the right side of the boat. So facing forward, this will be starboard, this will be port. So this is the port side over here, this is the starboard side over here. And so I want to keep track of those because it gets confusing, especially when I go to put these 4 strips here onto the hull of the boat, because the boat's going to be upside down. So I want to end up marking these port and starboard and be clear on which is going to be which and be consistent. Here. And while I'm at it, I'm going to mark up the ends in the same manner, just to have a bunch of sanity checks. So these are spare. This is the water line. This is the part line. This is the part line. This is the center line. This is port, starboard, port, port, port. Over here we've got spare, water line, part line, starboard, starboard. Got the wrong one marked. Part line, starboard. All right. Now it's time to start binning all of this. So again, the last strips to go on are going to be the center line. So I have this split up into the port and starboard, and here's the center line. And so those are the last strips that will go on to the deck. And so I'll put those on in the bins first. So these are hull, these are spare. And now likewise for the port side. So I've brought the material for the bottom of the boat back into the picture. I've got this bundled up. Here's the spares. Here's the two sides. Water line right there. This is a lighter color, which was originally the flat grain 1-inch stock where we ripped everything off the edge. Book match set right there. And we'll add to these stacks the strips that are the top side strips, and again in the order in which we want them to appear on the boat. The thing I'm going to do is, since these are port and starboard here, left and right, and the boat's going to be upside down when I go here, I'm going to end up with the port strips over on the starboard side of the bin and the starboard strips over on the port side of the bin, just to make sure that when I go to pull the strips out of the bins, I'm pulling the correct ones out. And we are going to be starting at the water line. So this strips the water line, so that's the first strip going on the boat. We want that to be the last strip in the bin, so we end up here with the first strip going in to the bin is strip number 8, and that will go in on the far side. And these spare strips will just drop into spare slot in the deck bins. And so these will be in a similar order. On the other side of the bin. And the last strips to go in are the top side strips that go into the hull bins. So there we have all the material, and this is just the spare of the bottom material. And we'll just drop that into the bin here. And then before everything gets messed up, we will bundle these all together. The easiest way to bundle them is just wrap some stretch wrap around the bins. I'm bundling up the deck pieces now because I'm going to work on the hull first. So we've got all the strips bundled up, ready to go in bins. So it should be easy at this point. Whenever we need a strip, the next strip in the stack should be the one going on the boat. And I think we're ready to start putting strips on the boat. Let's see if we can get a strip on. The last thing I have to do before the forms are ready to accept some strips is just put some masking tape on the edges. This helps prevent the strips from getting epoxied to the forms. But with masking tape, I can still take the hot melt glue and hot melt glue strips to it. The hot melt glue sticks okay to masking tape, but the epoxy will not penetrate through this and glue the strips to the forms. So it's just a matter of putting tape all the way around the edges. So now I have the forms all taped up, and I'm just going to flip the forms over so I'm ready to work on the bottom. I haven't completed the beveling of the bottom of these forms to match the inner stems, so I'm just going to take a quick swipe down here with a block plane and just give this bottom edge of the end form a little bit of a bevel. Essentially, I want it to blend in with the existing forms. With that done, I'll put a little bit of tape on it, keep things from sticking. So now I can secure this inner stem in place. And same drill down at the other end. This is a rolling bevel, start at a high angle here and end up with a low angle. Where it's a higher angle, more material needs to be cut off, so I spend more time at the high angle than I do at the low angle. So with the forms upside down, so the bottom of the boat is on top, my plan is to strip from the part line, which is this point right here, which is the widest point on most of the forms, and strip from there up to the center line. And again, we're going to strip with what's essentially the top side wood from here up to the water line. And so from the water line up to the keel line, we'll use the lighter colored bottom wood. So first from the part line up to the water line, the darker material, and from the water line up to the center line, the lighter color. So to get a good reference for the part line, I'm going to notch some strips into those part line slots. So it'll just be, put it in like that, and hold it in place. Since I happen to have these grooves here, which are a 1/4 inch wide, I'm just taking a 1/4 inch thick little scrap of wood, 1/4 inch square, and notching it in there. And so the first strip will lay on top of that strip. And we do that to all the forms. Now is another time to double check the form alignment, make sure that those little tabs are all at the same elevation all the way down the boat. They should end up in a nice straight line. Again, we need to get our eyes right down on that plane, and if everything's perfect, should it look like one continuous flat surface all the way down there. If we need to do a little bit of adjustment of any of the forms, we can do it now. So we've got the little sticks out on either side on the part line, and now we should be ready to put a strip in place. So we're working on the bottom of the boat, and the left and right are flipped because the boat is flipped. So the port side of the boat, this is the starboard side of the boat. When you flip it over, that's the way it would lay out. And so the first strip that's going to go on is going to be right here on top of this little stick, and it's going to be one of the dark strips. It should be counting down from there, so this will be the first dark strip, and there should be 4 dark strips before we start proceeding with the light colored strips. So now we have my first opportunity for a sanity check. I've got this marked as waterline. We're starting at the part line, and we're going to be moving up from there. So 5, 6, 7, 8. Then we start in with the lighter color material. And you see I have this part line here and water line there. So I actually have these in the reverse order. And I can sanity check that again, working up here, 5, 6, 7, 8. Look over here and I see this is strip 9. So the next strip after this, when I flip it over and start working on it, should be strip 9. So I want to end up with the first strip on here being strip 8. I'm not sure what I said when I was stacking these up, but this should be the first strip, this should be the last strip. So I need to reverse the order of these. So I'm just going to take out of the bin, down to the next bin. So now I have part line on top, and we'll stick it back up into the bin up here. And likewise on the other side. So now I have them in the right order. Part line, port side, strip 8, 7, 6, 5, and now we start with the lighter wood, working up from there. I'm going to start with a strip on the port side of the boat, so I'm going to take this strip out of the stack. So I can just stick this strip right on top of those little sticks. So with the strip laid in place, it should be nice and straight. A couple things we want to check. We want to make sure there's enough overhang here to get beyond the end. And same thing down at this end. So enough overhang to get beyond the end. This is the part line, port side, strip number 8. The marks are on the outside. I want them on the body of the boat. I want the marks on the outside. This first strip's fairly critical we get it right. All the other strips and their location will be defined by how this strip lays on the boat. Every other strip is pretty much running parallel to that because we're butting the edge of one strip next to the edge of the other strip, and this is defining that first edge. So we want to try and get this as accurate as possible, and so it's another chance to check the alignment of the forms. We can see if anything's a little bit off, if anything needs a little bit of tweaking. The other thing that happens with this is, since we're laying strips side by side all the way up to the center line and doing the same on the other side, eventually they're going to meet up at the keel line. And how well we get this balanced height-wise on either side will determine how well those strips meet. In a sort of perfect situation, the end of each mirroring strip, the tip of it perfectly lines up with the tip of the strip coming from the other side that mirrors it. And so we end up with a bunch of perfect V's running down that keel line. That's a lot to ask. There's a lot of opportunities for little inaccuracies to accumulate by the time we get to that center line. But by doing as accurate a job as we can, laying these out at the first strip out, that will go a long way to getting that sort of ideal situation along the keel line. It's a lot to ask to get it perfect there, and if you don't get it perfect, it's really hard to see that it's not lined up perfectly, especially when you have matched wood like this, in that the tone of color from one strip to the next doesn't change all that much, and as a consequence, it's hard to see where one strip ends and the next strip begins. Since I had the CNC machine, I had the opportunity to cut this groove along the edge of the forms. The goal of that is to be able to clamp the strip down tight against this stick and then tight up against the form. It's not absolutely necessary. There's other ways you can do it. If I don't have that little groove, I have a bunch of these little blocks, and I can take and use that to just hold the strip down tight against the little stick there. I don't always use these sticks either, but this is a good way to get started. I'm going to then clamp all the way down the length of the boat, get them all test fitted in place. Since this strip is so critical to the alignment of all the other strips, it's worth taking your time and getting this one right. And so, be patient, eyeball down it, double check, triple check, and come back and make any adjustments you need. If something looks a little bit out of alignment, double check that your little stick's in the right place, it's not crooked, make sure the strip is tight down against the little stick, and then if you need to, you can always twist the form a little bit. A little tap with the hammer to align things up and make sure everything's straight. So I'm going to attach the strips to the forms with this hot melt glue gun. This is a sort of an industrial glue gun. It's got a couple things going for it. It's got a very fine tip on it. Basically, it's a piece of brass tubing coming out to the end. Lets me sneak the tip down in between tight sections. It also has temperature control. I find with the glue I use, the best compromise between sticking well and releasing easily is setting the temperature at around 425, something like that. It takes big long glue sticks, and so you're not running out all the time. With little dots of glue, this stick will last a very long time. I'm going to start near the middle of the boat and work out towards the ends. You could start at one end and work to the other. I just find working from the middle out works best for me. You don't want to start at the ends and work towards the middle. You might have a little bit of excess length in the strip that will buckle a little bit and make the boat a little bit less fair. And so starting in the middle, I'll just take a clamp off. I'll take the clamp off, open up a little gap, stick the tip in there, make a little 1/8 inch dot or smaller, press it tight. With the beveled forms, that should be a pretty tight fit there, and so that glue should be hard almost instantaneously. From there, move on to the next one. So we're taking the clamp off, open up a little gap, stick the glue gun in there, make a little tiny dot. That was even more than I wanted. Press it tight. Once we've got a strip on one side, we can double check it again, make sure there's nothing crazy going on. And then we'll put a strip on the other side. So I'm grabbing, it should be strip number 8, starboard side. Strip number 8, starboard side. Now the strip on this side, we want to align to the strip on the other side to start our mirror image book match. A couple things going on here. We've got this piece of tape that's already under that strip. We want to get that out of the way. And we can align this end down to that end. And now these are matched to each other. So when we go to clamp in this strip on the form, we'll just use this same alignment to make sure we get a mirror image side to side. A constant annoyance when you go to adjust the length of a strip like this. Right now all that's holding it to the forms are these little sticks. You go to slide it one way or the other and it ends up falling off and you got to start from scratch. So I use those little U-shaped brackets just as a little thing to hold it in place while I'm doing my adjusting. So I got this little U-shaped bracket, stick it on there, and strip can slide through there, but it's not going to fall off. So it can adjust the end here, and so the length is just right. And then start clamping these down to the forms. I'll go double check the strip again, make sure it's all straight and fair, and start gluing it down in place. With everything glued in place, we want to double check it again. Triple check. I want to see the strip looking nice and straight and fair, smooth curves. So this is why we double check. Here we have this strip. It came off the little stick right here and is now swooping up. So we want to fix that. Break it off. Clean out any glue that's in the way. Come in and glue it again. So now that looks straight. At the ends here, I haven't yet done anything with the inner stem. I want to attach these strips on either side to that inner stem. I just want to make sure they're straight. So first thing I need to do is get them out of the way from each other. They won't stay in place right now because one's pushing on the other. So get it down in here and we'll cut off the excess a little proud. So now I want to make sure this runs straight and true. I've got a little mark right here that shows that part line. So I'm going to try and align that with that part line like that. And now we can get this glued, the strip glued to the inner stem. This inner stem again is part of the finished boat. And so this is the first glue that's actually contributing to the finishing of the boat. So we will take and put a little bit of glue up on the surface of the wood there. You don't need to soak it down. Get it lined up with that part line there, top of that line. Strip on the other side is going to line up with that as well. Get it clamped in. Clean out the excess glue. Make sure it's still running straight. Cut the excess off one side. Get some glue on it. I'll put another piece of tape on the top of this just to hold it temporarily because this tape is in the way. This goes in here. A little bit of glue. Get the tops aligned perfectly. Double check everything's straight. So we're about 10 episodes into it now, and I finally got the first pieces of wood onto the kayak, and we're actually making forward progress on building this kayak. The next episode will be adding more strips to the bottom here, and it'll probably be a few episodes now of stripping progress, showing you different techniques along the way. Please be sure to post any questions you have. I really want to be able to help you out answering your questions. If you're enjoying this build, please hit like and subscribe to my channel. There's a lot more ahead of us here. This is a big project. It's going to take a little while, but one step at a time we'll make some nice progress. And it's going to be a beautiful boat when it's done. My thanks to all my Patreon supporters. Your donations really help me produce these videos. My bonus to my supporters is I get to see these videos a few days before the general public. So if you're impatient and want to see what's going on, please go to my Patreon page and make a donation. I really appreciate it. Until the next episode, I'm Nick Schade at the Guillemot Kayaks Workshop. Thanks for watching and happy paddling.